Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahabhiryan karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Om. Good. Welcome back to our weekly Bhagavad Gita class. We continue our study of Chapter 3, Karma Yoga. We'll recite a few verses, beginning with verse 12. As always, be sure to glance at the meaning and then repeat after me. Ishtan bhogan hivo deva, ishtan bhogan hivo deva, dasyante yajna bhavitaha, dasyante yajna bhavitaha, tardattana pradayabhyo, tardattana pradayabhyo, yo bhunkte stena heva saha, yo bhunkte stena heva saha, yajna shishtashina santo, yajna shishtashina santo, muchyante sarva kilbishaihi, muchyante sarva kilbishaihi, bhunjate te tvagham papa, bhunjate te tvagham papa, ye pachantyatma karanata, ye pachantyatma karanata, annad bhavanti bhutani, annad bhavanti bhutani, parjanyaranna sambhavaha, parjanyaranna sambhavaha, yajñāt bhavati parjanyo, yajñāt bhavati parjanyo, yajñah karma samudbhavaha, yajñah karma samudbhavaha, karma brahmodbhavam vidhi, karma brahmodbhavam vidhi, brahmākshara samudbhavam, brahmākshara samudbhavam, tasmāt sarvagatam brahma, tasmāt sarvagatam brahma, nityam yajñe pratishtitam, nityam yajñe pratishtitam, evam pravartitam chakram, evam pravartitam chakram, nanuvartayati hayaha, nanuvartayati hayaha, aghayorendriya ramo, aghayorendriya ramo, mogham partha sajivati, mogham partha sajivati, yastvatmaratireva syad, yastvatmaratireva syad, atmatriptascha manavaha, atmatriptascha manavaha, atmanyeva cha santushtas, atmanyeva cha santushtas, tasya karyam na vidyate, tasya karyam na vidyate, naiva tasya krite narto, naiva tasya krite narto, na krite neha kaschana, na krite neha kaschana, na chasya sarva bhuteshu, na chasya sarva bhuteshu, kaschirarthavyapashrayah, kaschirarthavyapashrayah. Very good. Let us return to where we left off. We had just finished verse 13. And let me introduce today's class properly. The topic, as you'll remember from last week's class, is Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. And here Buddhi means attitude, an attitude of arpana, offering our deeds to Ishvara, God. And this is one of the many aspects of karma yoga, as I've said several times. Karma yoga is not one thing, it's not one teaching, it's a whole collection of teachings and attitudes, all of which change our attitude towards karma, in particular, change our intention. Generally, and I've said this too many times, but if you don't get this, you don't get karma yoga. And that is, usually our actions are motivated by raga, dvesha. Raga, we are driven to get what we want. Dvesha, we are driven to avoid what we don't want. And it's like we are slaves to this raga, dvesha inside. What karma yoga is a set of strategies. I've never used that term before, but it seems to fit. A set of strategies to help us overcome that raga, dvesha, and gain this inner freedom further. And a point I'll make a little bit later in today's class. I think we'll get that far. To overcome raga, dvesha, at first, we use the strategies of karma yoga and use our willpower to overcome raga, dvesha, so we're no longer slaves to these inner demons, so to speak. Later, when we're enlightened, we are free from raga, dvesha without using our willpower. Naturally, we achieve that state of inner freedom. So at the stage of sadhana, spiritual practice, karma yoga is to use our willpower to overcome raga, dvesha, and that culminates, that sadhana, that spiritual practice, then culminates in enlightenment, at which time you become free from raga, dvesha naturally, spontaneously. Now, in this sequence of verses, we're seeing Sri Krishna use a metaphor of a yajna. Yajna is a Vedic ritual, fire ritual, like what's now called homa in South India, havan, it's called in North India, loosely translated as sacrifice, a ritual in which you make offerings into a ritual fire. And remember the symbolism? The flames consume your offerings and transport them to the gods. So here Sri Krishna is using this yajna as a symbol for Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, this attitude of offering, dedicating our deeds to Ishvara. And the basic part of the basis of the metaphor is very simple. Just as you make offerings into a ritual fire, which is a karma, of course, to offer anything into a fire is a karma, it is a deed. In the same way, we should offer all of our deeds to Ishvara, not by means of a ritual fire, but by means of our intention, by dedicating those actions to Ishvara. And we've discussed several times before, to dedicate our actions to Ishvara means to set aside our personal agendas and instead choose to follow Dharma. By following Dharma, we act in ways that are pleasing, so to speak, to Ishvara. In this way, we dedicate our actions to Ishvara by setting aside our personal agenda, by willfully setting aside raga and dvesha. This is the essence. We use our willpower, set aside raga and dvesha, and choose to follow Dharma instead. And in this last verse we just saw on the screen right now, he gives another further application of this yajna symbolism. Sri Krishna observes that whatever food is offered in a ritual, that food becomes sanctified and freed from any kinds of sin that was involved in its preparation. Suppose your cook is a sinful person. It's believed, you don't have to believe this, but it's believed that if your cook is sinful, to some extent, that sinfulness, as it were, affects the food. So therefore, if that food, before you consume it, is ritually offered, it becomes free from that sinful taint. And that Sri Krishna gives that here in verse 13 as a metaphor. If we dedicate our deeds to Ishvara, those deeds become purified, those deeds become freed from sin, so to speak. We discussed it at some length in the last class. We'll continue today. These next two verses give a very elaborate, not very elaborate, two verses, but he expands on the importance of yajna, ritual. Now, just to introduce these two verses, in modern times, we no longer focus much on ritual, and that's fine. But remember, in ancient times, at the time of Sri Krishna, rituals were crucial in daily life. Remember, and I want to remind you of something we discussed at some length in a prior class. In ancient times, no one understood the laws of nature. So therefore, if you want rain to fall for your crops, you better do certain rituals, because those rituals give an offering unto the gods who caused the rain. If you fail to make those offerings unto the gods, it may not rain. I'm just giving this as an example to show how central these rituals were in ancient times. They're not so central today, and that's okay. But in order to understand these two verses, we need to understand how important yajna, ritual sacrifice, was in ancient times. Let's see these verses. Annad bhavanti bhutani, annad bhavanti bhutani, parjanyaranna sambhavaha, parjanyaranna sambhavaha, yajnat bhavati parjanyo, yajnat bhavati parjanyo, yajna karma samudbhavam, yajna karma samudbhavam. So here Sri Krishna gives a sequence that shows the centrality of ritual sacrifice. And he begins by observing in first line that bhutani, all beings, all creatures, all living beings, bhavanti, they exist not because of food. All living beings exist because of food. And in the next line, annasambhavaha, and the existence of that food, parjanyat, comes from rain, as we just said. And by the way, I'll write this up on the board in just a moment. And further, parjanyaha bhavati, and the rains come yajnat, because of ritual sacrifice, as we just discussed. And finally, in this verse, yajnaha karma samudbhavam, and that yajna, that ritual sacrifice, is karma samudbhavam, born of action, ritual action. We're seeing the first part of a sequence. The sequence continues in the next verse, but before we go there, let us just see. In order to get some clarity, it will be helpful if I just write these steps on the board. So we begin with bhutani. Make sure that's on. Bhuta here means creatures, beings. And beings like you and me are born and exist because of anna, food. After all, our bodies are made of food, and even before you were born, you existed because of food your mother ate. So we are born of food, and that anna, that food, is born of parjanya, water. Rains, literally. Parjanya, rain. So because of the rains, we have food. Because of food, we have existence. But as I said, those rains, again, in ancient times, they didn't understand this cycle of evaporation and precipitation. You might remember studying that when you were a child. They didn't understand it. So for the ancients, they thought that parjanya, the rains, depended on yajna, sacrifice. So, we exist because of food, food exists because of the rains exist because of yajna, and there are two more steps of this sequence, which we'll see in just a moment. All right, next verse. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi, karma brahmodbhavam vidhi, brahmakshara samudbhavam, brahmakshara samudbhavam, tasmat sarvagatam brahma, tasmat sarvagatam brahma, nityam yagne pratishtitam, nityam yagne pratishtitam. Last two steps of this sequence. The prior part of the sequence ended with yajna, ritual sacrifice, and Sri Krishna continues, vidhi, O Arjuna, please understand that I missed something. I apologize, because I missed I missed a step here. The last line of the prior verse, yajnaha karma samudbhavam. So yajna is born of karma. So a ritual requires karma, which is the actual offering. The act of offering is the karma. So that step I missed, I apologize. So once again, you exist because of food, food exists because of rains exist because of rituals exist because of your offerings, the act of offering. And then, where am I? Here I am. Then he continues, vidhi, O Arjuna, understand that karma, the last link from the prior verse, is Brahma udbhavam. Excuse me. And here we have to be a little careful. And this is a place where we often need a commentary to get the right meaning. Because here, Brahma means scriptures, means the Vedas. Any proper commentary will say that in this context, Brahma means the Vedas. And it's not only here, but in the Taittiriya Upanishad. In many places, we find scriptures in general and the Vedas. Not scriptures in general, the Vedas. And really only the Vedas, the Vedic scriptures, are often referred to by the name Brahma. So karma brahmodbhavam. So the acts of offering are born of Vedas. The Vedas give the directions, instructions for the performance of those rituals. And then we come to the last step, Brahma akshara samudbhavam. And here Brahma again means Vedas. So Brahma, the Vedic scriptures, are samudbhavam. They originate from Akshara. Akshara, the immutable, the eternal, the unchanging. It's an adjective that describes Ishvara, the God of the cosmos. So let me just complete the our chain of causality. So the first line here in verse 15 says, karma is born of Brahma. But as we said, Brahma means the Vedas, scriptures. And then it's the final step is Brahma, meaning the Vedas, is born of Akshara. Akshara literally means that which never... Am I falling off the screen? I am falling off the screen after karma. Not fitting. And anyway, I'm just going to, I don't have enough room here. So after karma, you can't see, comes Brahma. Brahma meaning Vedic scriptures. And after, maybe I can. So here, Brahma, which is Vedas. That's not, I'm sorry, I haven't used this board much before, so I have to get used to it. Is that showing? That's showing. Okay, Brahma, Vedas. So, here we go. How's that? And then Brahma, the Vedas, is born of Akshara. Okay, you can see that a little. And Akshara literally means that which never decays, that which is immutable and eternal, and it's a word we often use for Ishvara. And I apologize if all of that isn't completely on the screen, but I think that's the best I can do. That's not so bad. All right. Okay, enough. So, this is the sequence. So beings are born of food. Bhuta, beings, are born of anna, food. Anna, food, is born of parjanya, the rains. The rains are born of yajna, sacrifice. Yajna is born of karma, our actions, our offerings into that sacrificial fire. And karma is born of Brahma in the sense of Vedas, the scriptures that tell us what rituals to do. And finally, the scriptures are born of Ishvara. Ishvara is the source of everything, including the scriptures. And then Sri Krishna concludes, Tasmat, therefore, he instructs Arjuna, Sarvagatam Brahma, Sarvagatam, all-pervasive Brahma, and here once again, Brahma in the context of this verse means Vedic scriptures. Sarvagatam, all-pervasive scriptures, all-pervasive in terms of time. So it's considered that the Vedic knowledge wasn't invented by the ancient rishis. It already existed and was discovered by the ancient rishis. The Vedic wisdom existed from the beginning of time because it was created by Ishvara. Therefore, it's called here Sarvagatam, all-pervasive in the sense of time. The eternal Vedas, we could paraphrase that. Nityam, always, yagnye pratishtatam. The Vedas are pratishtatam. They always abide yagnye, in rituals, in ritual sacrifice. And the point Sri Krishna is making here is that this whole sequence, 2 points he's making. One is to show the centrality of ritual. Again, it was extremely central in ancient times, maybe less so today. But here, and he concludes by saying there is a scriptural basis for that ritual. In other words, the rituals are not just being done out of convention. The rituals are being done because they are scripturally ordained. And so by following this whole sequence, you are following a scripturally ordained path. Of course, our topic is really not rituals. Our topic is karma yoga. So what is the connection of karma yoga? First of all, by showing the centrality of yajna, he's showing the centrality of Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. That's our main metaphor, right? Yajna represents Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. Since yajna was so central in ancient times, then we can consider that Ishvara Arpana Buddhi is as central to karma yoga as rituals were in ancient times. That's one point he's making. The other point he's making, and that this in the final two lines, is a scriptural basis. So the scriptural basis for yajna then carries over to the scriptural basis for karma yoga in general, and scriptural basis for Ishvara Arpana Buddhi in particular. So he's making these metaphoric connections for us. Okay, let us proceed. Evam pravartitam chakram, evam pravartitam chakram, nanuvartayati hayaha, nanuvartayati hayaha, aghayorindriya ramo, aghayorindriya ramo, mogham partha sajivati, mogham partha sajivati. Yeah, he uses very strong language here in the last two lines. I'll explain when we get there. First line, evam, thus, pravartitam chakram. Thus the chakra, the cycle, pravartitam, continues. What cycle? This is a cycle. The cycle that we are born of food, food is born of rains, rains are born of rituals, etc., etc. So thus, this cycle continues. The cycle continues for intelligent and pious people, but not everyone is intelligent or pious. Therefore, in the second line, yaha, one who, iha, right before yaha is iha, here in this life, one who na anuvartayati, one who does not follow this cycle. We spoke extensively in the last class about the need to give back. This is kind of the idea of yajna. Instead of looking at it that we make the offerings to cause the rain, turn it around and say, Ishvara gives us rain, so therefore we should give something back. We should be grateful. Maybe we should say a prayer of gratitude. Maybe we should do a ritual to express gratitude. We can look at yajna both ways. Either the offerings are done to propitiate the god, so to speak, to bring the rains down, or alternatively, the offerings are made out of gratitude for the rains which keep falling in abundance. Both ways are fine. Both ways are a correct way to understand this yajna. So it's a matter of giving back. But yaha na anuvartayati, one who doesn't follow this cycle, one who doesn't give back, one who receives all the blessings of Ishvara without expressing gratitude, without giving anything back, such a person is aghayuhu. Here's the harsh language. He is a sinner. His life is nothing but sin. Agha is the word for sin. Interesting, the word agha even sounds ugly and sinful. Agha. So agha ayu. one whose life is nothing but sin. Such a person is Indriya Aramaha. The person Aramaha revels in the Indriyas, revels in sensual pleasures. Sri Krishna uses this harsh words and says, Partha, O Arjuna, Saha, such a person, Mogham Jivati, some person lives, Jivati lives, Mogham, lives in vain, is a fine translation, lives Mogham, uselessly. They throw away their lives because all they're managing to do, without giving anything back. Here's the idea. You receive all these blessings in your life, and if you fail to give anything back, if you merely enjoy everything that you've been given, you're living a life like a dog or cat. like an animal, like a cow. An animal will just receive whatever comes, and an animal will not intentionally give anything back. I know dogs and cats seem to have some kind of affection, etc., but they're not in a human sense. So here, to receive all these blessings God has given us without a sense of gratitude and without offering anything back, Sri Krishna says, such lives are agayuhu. These are lives which are molded by raga and dvesha. So the behavior of a dog and cat is molded by raga and dvesha. The behavior of almost all human beings is similarly largely determined, not entirely, but largely determined by raga and dvesha. Raga, again, this compulsion to get what you want. Dvesha, this aversion to run away from what you don't want. But to live a life in which you are completely controlled by raga dvesha is quite literally to live the life of an animal. That's why he says, Mogam Partha Sajivati. You don't live up to the possibilities of human life. As a human being, you can use your willpower. You can use your willpower to set aside raga dvesha and instead follow dharma. This is our definition of karma yoga, right? To willfully overcome raga dvesha through the practice of karma yoga, in this sense by setting aside your agenda and following dharma. This willpower is crucial, and it is a human gift. Animals don't seem to have this what we call willpower. I gave this example once. Suppose you put a bowl of food in front of a hungry dog and then tell the dog to wait, and then you go away for a minute. Will the dog wait? As soon as you go away, the dog will eat. Now, suppose on the other hand, you were invited to somebody's home for dinner, and your host puts a plate of food in front of you and says, wait just a minute, as your host goes into the kitchen for something. As soon as the host goes into the kitchen, you start eating the food. You won't, of course. This is the willpower that we possess as human beings. It is a unique and special gift that we as human beings possess. Here, Sri Krishna is saying that to fail to use your willpower, to overcome the manipulation of this raga dvesha, to allow yourself to be dragged about by raga dvesha, to fail to use your willpower to overcome the compulsion of raga dvesha, is to live the life of an animal. Mogam jivati is to is to throw away what is unique and special and valuable about human life. So, karma yoga is to use your will to overcome raga dvesha, to overcome the compulsivity of raga dvesha. Animals are compulsive, so that dog is compelled to eat the food. You are not so compelled to eat the food. You have willpower. Now, it goes further than that. So at first we use willpower to overcome raga dvesha, but as I said in the introduction to this class, eventually means when you become enlightened. When you become enlightened, you are free from raga dvesha without using your will. You no longer need to exercise your will to break free from the compulsion of raga dvesha. Raga and dvesha are just absent for an enlightened person. You've not just overcome them, they have been defeated. We can say that the karma yogi temporarily overcomes raga and dvesha, but for the enlightened person, raga and dvesha have been vanquished, destroyed. And we'll see how Sri Krishna describes that condition of having not just overcome temporarily, but having vanquished raga dvesha. Sri Krishna describes how that enlightened person responds. Yas tvatmaratireva syad, yas tvatmaratireva syad, atmatriptascha manavaha, atmatriptascha manavaha, atmanyeva cha santushtas, atmanyeva cha santushtas, tasya karyam na vidyate, tasya karyam na vidyate. So this verse is a kind of a response to, in the third line, Indriya aramaha, one who revels in sense pleasures. So in contrast to that person who is driven by raga and dvesha and revels in sense pleasures, yaha tu, breaking the words apart, yaha tu, but yaha, one who atmaratihi. For our Sanskrit students, that arama and rati, atmarati, these come from the same root. So this is a very obvious connection Sri Krishna is making, using that root ram, to revel. So in a prior verse, one who revels in sense pleasures, but here he's talking about atmarati, one who revels in atma, the true self, one who has discovered that innate divinity, one who has discovered the fullness and completeness that is your true nature as Satchidananda Atma, Yahatu, but one who Atmaratihi eva syat, one who happens to have discovered Atma as a true source of contentment and peace and who revels in that. Atma triptaha cha manavaha, manavaha, a person who is Atma tripta. What a beautiful expression. One who is tripta, full, complete, fulfilled, and fulfilled how? Not through raga and dvesha. One who is fulfilled by Atma. Atma tripta, one who is content, one who is satisfied by one's essential nature. Atmani eva cha santushtaha. That person, eva, indeed, is santushtaha, is content. Atmani eva, in oneself alone. Conventional behavior is that you're driven by raga dvesha to seek objects of happiness and pleasure and contentment. But here the enlightened person is santushtaha, is contented, atmani eva, in oneself alone. Tasya, for that person, karyam na vidyate. There's na vidyate, there is no karyam. Karyam means that which needs to be done. Generally, we always feel that something needs to be done for the sake of your contentment and inner peace. And that's the basis for raga and dvesha, right? You feel that sense of, Puja Swami Tadatmananda called it a sense of incompleteness. Based on that sense of incompleteness, your raga and dvesha naturally come. Raga to pursue something that can remove that incompleteness. Dvesha to avoid anything that would make that inner incompleteness worse. So that inner lack, that inner incompleteness is the root for this raga dvesha, and therefore always seeking. A life of seeking, continual seeking, without ever finding lasting peace and perfect contentment. So for the enlightened person, tasya, for that person, na vidyate, there is nothing, karyam, there is nothing that needs to be done. A very nice term that's often used to describe an enlightened person, the adjective krita kritya. One who has done everything that needs to be done. Krita kritya. Imagine having a to-do list. You already have a to-do list. Imagine a to-do list for your entire life. How long that to-do list would be. Imagine ticking off all of every item on that to-do list, ticking it off at the same time, not sequentially. Conventional behavior is to tick them off one at a time. You work, you seek, and you tick it off. You work hard, you seek some kind of pleasure, and you tick off the next one, you tick off the next one, you tick off the next one. For the enlightened person, that to-do list is blank. A sense of utter fulfillment, contentment, a sense of arrival at the place you've always wanted to be. Sri Krishna describes that enlightened person in one more verse. He says, Naiva tasya krite narto, Naiva tasya krite narto, na krite neha kaschana, na krite neha kaschana, na chasya sarva bhuteshu, na chasya sarva bhuteshu, kaschirarthavyapashrayah, kaschirarthavyapashrayah. Yes. Tasya, for that enlightened person, na eva, there is not anything, na eva, last word, artaha. There is no object, artha, which is to be gained kritena, through effort, through action. Reiterates what was said at the end of the prior verse. There is nothing to be gained through any action. It's a beautiful expression of the sense of perfection, completion, utter contentment felt by the enlightened person. Na kritena artaha. There is nothing to be accomplished through further action. Na akritena iha kaschana. Na kaschana. Nor is there anything to be accomplished akritena, through inaction. There's nothing you have to do, nor is there anything you have to avoid doing. You're not compelled to do anything, but nor are you compelled to avoid anything. There's a nice example of this. During our 3-year course in Vedanta, Sanskrit and Meditation that Puja Swami Tadatmananda conducted in Pennsylvania, in his Pennsylvania ashram, Arsha Vidya Gurukulam, He conducted that class in the late 1980s. I was one of the students, fortunate to be a student in that course. Here's an interesting observation. Actually, this is just after the course came to an end. And after the course came to an end, by that time, a very beautiful temple to Lord Dakshinamurti had been born. Dakshinamurti, as you know, is a form of Lord Shiva as guru, as teacher. It was a consecrated temple. There was a priest doing daily pujas there. And so those of us who lived at the ashram, this is just after the course came to an end. I was still living there. And we would gather every day in fact, twice a day, morning and evening, we would gather for puja. The priest would do the pujas, we would all chant and perform these rituals together every day, morning and evening. Puja Swami Dayananda usually didn't attend those daily pujas. Of course, he had so many, in those days he had so many responsibilities, it's hardly surprising that he didn't attend. But then he started attending. And we wondered why he started attending. And he actually explained, I think in satsang, we asked a question, Swamiji, why are you now attending the pujas? And sometimes he'll answer in a casual way, why not? And why not is a perfectly legitimate way. But what he observed was some of the ashram residents were not attending the daily rituals, and he thought that he needed to set a good example. As head of the ashram, if he wasn't attending those rituals, he wasn't setting the right example, so he started attending the rituals again to set an example. And here's the point, he had nothing to gain through attending the rituals. He's already enlightened, but then he had nothing to lose by attending the rituals. And if by attending the rituals he set a good example and encouraged others to attend, well, you get the point. So the first two lines here, there's nothing to be gained through any action, nor is there anything to be gained through avoiding any action. In the third line, nacha, also, asya, for that person, sarva bhuteshu, for any person, for anything, for any situation, na kaschit artavyapashrayaha, na kaschit, there is none of what? No arta vyapashrayaha. Vyapashrayaha, dependence, no dependence on any artha, on any object, on anything, on any situation. Asya, for that enlightened person, sarva bhuteshu, with regard to anything in the world, na kaschit artha vyapashrayaha, no emotional dependence. No attachment. This is true inner freedom. When your contentment and inner peace doesn't depend on anyone, on anything, on any situation whatsoever, that allows you to be content and comfortable in any situation you find yourself in. Generally, we seek out comfortable situations. Generally, we avoid uncomfortable situations. An enlightened person need not seek out a comfortable situation. An enlightened person need not avoid an uncomfortable situation. An enlightened person is comfortable, at peace, content, regardless of the situation. Okay, this topic concludes with one more verse. Tasmada sakta satatam, tasmada asakta satatam karyam karma samachara karyam karma samachara asakto hyacharan karma asakto hyacharan karma paramapnoti purushaha paramapnoti purushaha. We know it concludes the topic because he begins the verse tasmat. When a verse tasmat means therefore, and when a verse begins with tasmat, it often, not always, often means that we're concluding a line of thought, a topic. So tasmat, therefore, Arjuna, karyam in the second line, karyam karma samachara. Therefore, you should do whatever needs to be done. Now, the last two verses were talking about not needing to do anything at all, but recall, Sri Krishna was talking about the enlightened person. After those two verses talking about the enlightened person, now we're back to talking about the karma yogi. The karma yogi is still driven by raga dvesha, and therefore the karma yogi still needs to exercise willpower to avoid being dragged about by raga dvesha like a dog, to use willpower to avoid being dragged about by raga dvesha requires willpower. Tasmat, therefore, Arjuna, satatam, first line, always, karyam karma, those things that you need to do, that need to be done, dharma. Whatever is dharma. Karyam karma, things which should be done, which must be done. Samachara, do it. And that prefix sam, by the way, means do it well. Not just do it casually, but to do it well. Whatever is your duty, to do your duty well, completely, with attention. But a key word in the first half, to do your duty asaktaha, without attachment. So in a prior verse, Sri Krishna was talking about the enlightened person who is without attachment, spontaneously, effortlessly, by nature. But here, in this verse, we're talking about not an enlightened person. We're talking about a yet-to-be enlightened person, meaning a spiritual aspirant, a sadhaka, who is practicing karma yoga. And what does that karma yogi do? The karma yogi uses his or her will to be asakta, to be detached, to be free from attachment. And how? By setting aside your own personal agenda for the sake of following dharma. Just to make that a little bit more concrete. Monday morning, you get up and go to work. What is your intention in going to work? We said karma yoga is not a shift in what you do, it's a shift of intention. So there's a difference between a karma yogi and one who merely does karma. We call such a person karmi. Karmi merely does karma. Karma yogi is one who does karma yoga with the proper intention. What is the difference? The karmi goes to work on Monday morning for what purpose? Many purposes. One is a paycheck. Another is a sense of satisfaction in doing the work, maybe getting a raise, climbing the corporate ladder, whatever it is, approval of peers, praise from the boss, or maybe you're the boss and you get to exercise power and control over others. There are any number. Some people will get bored if they don't go to work. Some people retire and find themselves bored. Point is that a karmi goes to work on Monday morning for a whole variety of reasons. A karma yogi goes to work on Monday morning for one reason. What is that reason? You know the word. Dharma. That's it. It's that simple. If your motivation is to fulfill your duties, if your motivation is dharma, you are distinguished as being a karma yogi and not a karmi. So that's what it means to be asaktaha. Free from attachment means not driven by raga dvesha, but using your will to overcome raga dvesha and to follow dharma. Concluding here, he says, asaktaha hi. You have to break a word apart, the words he and acharan. He, because acharan karma, by performing action, acharan, doing, performing karma, performing your deeds, going to work on Monday morning, asaktaha, without attachment, using your will to set aside your personal agenda, using your will to overcome raga and dvesha, using your will to follow dharma. By doing so, in the last line, purushaha, such a person, param apnoti. Such a person apnoti, gains. Param, gains the ultimate goal of life. Perfect contentment and peace. Moksha, freedom from suffering. Sense of fullness, completeness. That person becomes enlightened and becomes krita kritya. You have that sense of satisfaction, that sense of completeness, that sense of having completed everything and anything that needs to be done. Notice, you use karma yoga to overcome raga and dvesha willfully, but then later, as that karma yoga eventually leads you to enlightenment, once you become enlightened, you continue doing the same things, but now without, look at the difference. So we mentioned karmi. We'll end with this last observation. Karmi is one who goes to work for a paycheck. We'll just make it simple. A karma yogi is one who goes to work because of dharma. A jnani is one who has jnana, an enlightened person. Why does the enlightened, first of all, does the enlightened person go to work? If there are bills to be paid and food to be bought, why not? So look at this. So the karmi goes to work for the paycheck. The karma yogi goes to work for the sake of dharma. The jnani goes to work because, why not? Nothing to be accomplished, nothing to be avoided. And if by going to work it puts food on the table and fills your stomach, then that's definitely a good thing. But notice where the karma yogi uses willpower to follow dharma. The jnani, the enlightened person, need not use willpower, but naturally and spontaneously follows dharma. That concludes this section. We'll go on to the next section in the next class. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhaveta, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma hamritangamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om Tat Sat.